Hello, it's Jill Fielding here, and this is what's caught my eye in the media this week. Well, first of all, we're all eagerly anticipating going to the shops on Monday as the lockdown starts to ease. And there's a lot of economic banter about how much people are going to spend when the shops open. And I've seen estimates as high as demand and purchasing will be up by 50% on its current levels on Monday when the shops reopen. Now, that would be phenomenal. I don't think it will be quite that high, but I think people will hit the shops on Monday. I certainly have got to go out and buy a new pair of shoes, so I'll be contributing to that. But over lockdown, it's estimated that we've saved as a nation an extra £238 billion because we haven't been able to go out and spend it. Now, that's a phenomenal amount of money and represents 16.3% savings of our disposable income versus only 6.8% the year before. And the Bank of England and the government are so obsessed with this that they're now calculating how much people are going to spend of their savings, because actually spending the savings makes a huge boost to the economy. And it's been estimated that if we spend £35 billion of our savings when the shops reopen, that will equate to 1.6% of our gross domestic product, our GDP. Now, that's nearly an entire year's growth in normal circumstances. So you can see how important that spending and saving is to the UK economy. Now, what's going to happen? We don't know. Are people going to carry on saving because that's the habit they've got into? Are they going to spend some and be cautious and save some? Or are they just going to go out and blow it all and hit the ground running? I suspect a lot of people are going to go out and blow it all. But this is so important to the UK economy and the government that the Bank of England now are predicting how much of that money we're going to spend, and their current prediction is that we're going to spend 5% of it over the next 3 years, and I think that's incredibly conservative. I think we're going to spend an awful lot more than that, but you know, let's see what happens. I'll go out and buy my new pair of shoes. Some people will go out and buy an awful lot more than that, but let's see what happens and what boost it makes to the economy. I think the economy is going to bounce back more quickly than anticipated. So good news there. The other thing that we hadn't really realised about the pandemic is that we know that COVID actually raises your temperature, but we didn't really understand that it would also raise property prices because property prices have gone off like a train over 2020 and prices have continued to rise. And now we're coming out of lockdown. There's this feeding frenzy with properties. Rightmove are estimating that they're getting 6,500 hits per minute on their website, and there's rumours of there being 50 buyers for every property in the Cotswolds worth over £2 million. There's rumours of people setting off to go and view a property, and by the time they get there, it's been sold. We hear of non-refundable deposits being paid. I read that in the press this week, that people are paying non-refundable deposits just to have the option to go and see something and offer on it because there are so many people chasing so few properties. Now, what's going to happen when lockdown lifts? My guess is that the market will continue to be hot. It's not going to go away anytime soon. We've still got an excess of demand over supply. We've got the boost of the first-time buyers, mortgages, 95% mortgages, and so on, and the tail end of the stamp duty holiday. So my estimation is that the property market is going to continue to be quite hot long after we've cooled down after COVID. Now, a few years ago, I made a pilot for a TV show, which was where I was going to advise people whether they should rent or buy a property. Now, the program never got made, and I think the main reason for that is that it's too simple a story, because you can calculate to the penny whether it's better to rent or whether it's better to buy. And there's no emotional roller coaster or jeopardy to that kind of decision making, particularly from somebody like me who's a mathematician. And when people are looking at whether they're going to rent or to buy, it is a very simple decision, because you take all the costs of buying, like the mortgage and so on, and the deposit probably, and then you compare that to the cost of renting and the deposit there, and they're different things. And it's been calculated that it's £800 a year better to buy at the moment than it is to rent. So it's cheaper to buy a property than it is to rent the equivalent property. And that £800 is an average over the country as a whole, and it rises to over 4,500 in London, better off buying. Of course, the rent or buy decision is only really relevant in the initial phases of a property possession, because after you've been in it a year or 18 months or 2 years, you've also got, if you buy, you've got the added benefit of the increase in the value of the property to take into account in the maths. So the decision making, the rent or buy one, really mathematically, financially, is only a conundrum at the beginning of a property inhabitation, and then once you get down the road a bit, buying will always win, because you've got a big asset accumulating, and many people use that asset to retire on and to release equity later on in their life. So an interesting conundrum. Buying will always win long term, but there's a short term debate about whether to rent or to buy in the early phases. But of course, that's only a financial decision. There's all the other emotional decisions about commitment and so on, which I think the TV program, the TV pilot, was aiming to look at, but didn't really manifest itself. Now, finally, during lockdown, I and a lot of other people have been watching more TV, and I watch quiz programs, and I've been watching The Chase, and I'm absolutely amazed when I watch that. What happens is that a member of the public goes up against a quiz master called a chaser, and they do a qualifying round to see how much money the chaser is going to offer them. And so, for example, if they answer 5 questions right, they get offered £5,000 as a reward if they can beat the chaser, and then they get a lower and a higher offer. And in watching that program for the last year, I've been amazed at the number of people that say to Bradley Walsh, who's the host of the program, "I'll take what I've earned, Bradley." Now, by that they mean they'll take the amount of money that equates to the number of questions that they've answered. But it's an odd thing to say, isn't it? I'll take what I've earned. And we have this odd notion certainly in the UK and in many cultures, that we have to earn our money. And if we take that to its logical conclusion, if you have to earn and slog and give up your time in order to get money, you will never be wealthy, because you've only got a limited amount of time, and you can't really live long enough. I mean, I suppose if you earn several million a year as a chief executive of some fancy organization, you might be able to do it, but for the rest of us, it isn't possible. And the only way really to become wealthy is if you separate out what you do with your time from what you do with your to get your money. So if you make investments in property, for example, we've talked about, then you can earn a return from that, and you don't physically have to work 9 till 5 to get it, because it comes passively to you. So in order for us to become wealthy, we have to disconnect this "I've earned it." We have to disconnect what we do with our time from what we do to get our money, and then we can become wealthy, and then we can go on quiz shows, and it isn't a case of we'll take the offer we've earned, we'll take the offer that's more appropriate strategically, because there's an issue with taking what's earned. It's an odd thing to say, isn't it? But it's caught my attention this week.